Uh-oh.
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. We're going to kick it off with the Golden Boy Promotions show, what was the flyweight title fight between Marlen Esparza, the former champion, and the newly crowned, unified, and Ring Magazine champion, Gabriela Alaniz. The second fight started off the same way the first did.
Gabriela basically picked up where she left off, coming out hard and fast in the first round, throwing punches and bunches.
Where Marlen is conceding real estate, backing up and backing off, side on, trying her best to stay out of range of Gabriela's jab and rolling the right hand that follows off the shoulder.
She was just moving around.
At the start, she's just moving. She's just backing up and backing off. A lot of posing, a lot of posturing, smiling while she does it, though failing to get very much done, in my humble opinion.
Gabriela is still throwing more, still landing more.
It's the first fight all over again. Marlen occasionally letting go of one or two punches at a time. They might get in, they might not, but none of them are holding back or holding off Gabriela Alaniz, who continued to step into her jab, push the envelope,
press on.
I saw Chris Mannix's anecdotal scorecard appear on the screen after the midway point. He seemed to be of the opinion that Marlen Esparza was ahead, that she was winning the fight, though I don't see why when all she was doing was moving. She's doing little more than moving. She is being outfought and outdogged the same way that she was in the first fight. Moving around, side on, trying to walk Gabriela Alaniz into counters, and occasionally she would get in with a counter, though not authoritative enough to stop Gabriela's forward momentum.
For every one punch Marlen threw, Gabriela would throw 3 and 4.
Punches to the head, punches to the body. Gabriela Alaniz, periodically, she'd get in with a few body shots, and I feel they did have an effect. Perhaps if she would have spent a little bit more time there, she could have taken Marlen Esparza's legs away.
Because that was Marlen Esparza's best weapon in this fight.
What was keeping her in this fight, not dissimilar from what we saw in the first one. The movement is what kept her in there. Clearly doesn't have the power to sit in the pocket and trade with Gabriela Alaniz, doesn't have the punching power or the work rate.
Gabriela was just busier, the noticeably busier, more prolific puncher within the round and in the fight.
Which was expected. What was not expected is that Gabriela would get a fair shake on the judges' scorecards. I didn't pick Gabriela to win this fight. I didn't.
Why?
For the same reason I didn't pick her to win the first one. Because Marlen Esparza has amassed a reputation for getting a lot of home cooking on the judges' scorecards. Whether you're talking about
Zamora,
the Ibeth Zamora-Silva fight, or the Naoko Fujioka fight.
This fight,
the first one,
seemed to me that unless you're going to go in there and hit Marlen Esparza with a chair, there's no shot of you getting a fair shake on the judges' scorecards. They're far too partial.
They have been. That's why I went with Marlen to win a decision in the first fight, and I went with her to win a decision in this one.
Cynicism.
More than boxing. That unless Gabriela goes in there and knocks her out, the judges aren't going to let her leave with a points decision. So you can imagine my surprise when the judges' scorecards were read and they actually gave the fight to Gabriela.
What changed?
Watch the first fight, then watch the second one. Not a lot. Gabriela, like most pressure fighters, she didn't change from one fight to the next. She approached the rematch the same way she approached the first fight, except in the rematch, she actually got the decision.
How do you reconcile that?
I've got some theories. Very recently, Gabriela Fundora toppled Golden Boy Promotions' then IBF champion, Areli Musinho. Afterwards, the people at Golden Boy decided to sign Gabriela.
Right.
Gabriela Fundora is the only other champion at this weight. She's in possession of that last brass ring, the IBF title.
Right.
And from the moment she won that title, I was convinced that Marlen Esparza is not going to fight her. She is not going to pursue a unification match for all the marbles with Fundora.
Right.
Marlen won't, but Gabriela Alaniz, she might. My opinion, they decided to give Alaniz a fair shake in this fight so that they could bring her back to fight Fundora. They know, or they knew, that Marlen Esparza wasn't going to do it. She wasn't going to run the gauntlet with Fundora, but Alaniz might. Ahead of this weekend's rematch, I had already been hearing rumors for weeks, for months, that Marlen's plans for the immediate future were to leave the flyweight division and move up to superfly. And then you see that she didn't even bother to make the weight. She was 2 pounds over, and she lost her titles on the scales.
It's clear that she had no intention of fighting Fundora after this.
In that situation, the best thing you can do is give Gabriela Alaniz a fair shake on the cards, because if she wins, maybe she'll fight Gabriela Fundora.
Since you just signed her.
No, I wasn't expecting Gabriela Alaniz to get a fair shake. Not originally, not against Marlen, who's known for getting gift decisions. Golden Boy is known for giving them. Just last week, they gave Arnold Barboza a gift decision. Though if the question is, why did Gabriela get a fair shake this time and not the last one? That's why.
That's why I think.
They want to bring her back. They want to put her in the ring with Gabriela Fundora because they knew Marlen wasn't going to fight her. Congratulations to Gabriela Alaniz for getting the decision that she should have got last year. In the co-main event of that same show, we saw young unbeaten Virgil Ortiz return to action for the second time this year against the so obviously overmatched Thomas Dulorme. Bear in mind, this guy used to campaign at 140 pounds. This fight was basically a middleweight fight, middleweight contest.
Right.
Now, ahead of the fight, I told you that I would be surprised if Thomas Dulorme makes it out of the first round, and he didn't. Virgil Ortiz brought this contest to an abrupt end off a well-placed left hook. Virgil is a talented body puncher if he can get mid-range to inside, and so far, he has.
Most of his fights.
He's a big, strong kid, and under normal circumstances, a contest like this one that ends so quickly, how you expected it to, it doesn't leave you with much to reflect upon. But if this one does, it's because Virgil's name is already attached to what is an even bigger show, what is a bigger fight with a bigger name, a more formidable fighter in Tszyu.
Is he gonna make it to that fight?
Virgil, since having returned and having recovered from what was a bad case of rhabdomyolysis from pushing his body too hard, now having moved up in weight, well, he hasn't actually campaigned as a junior middleweight yet. He hasn't actually made 154. He didn't make it earlier this year when he came back, and he didn't make it for this weekend's fight.
Is he gonna make it for Tszyu?
If he wants that WBA interim status, he's going to have to. WBA interim status that would line him up for the winner of that show's main event. After Virgil Ortiz knocked out Thomas Dulorme in one round, he confirmed that he will fight Tszyu next. So you have to think about that.
You also have to think about his cue ball head manager, Rick Merrigan, who has every intention of rocking the boat.
You know what this guy said after the fight? This guy said, we need this to be the main event August 3rd, Oscar De La Hoya and Eric Gomez. So I'm going to call you guys today and argue for a few minutes that this is the fight the fans are screaming for, the one that moves the gate in LA. And then you guys call and argue with Eddie Hearn a little, and it's okay to blame me and say, this goddamn Merrigan wants more money now and Virgil Ortiz to be the main event. Then Eddie will tell His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh that the crazy guy from Fresno that just filled the arena has some good points, and then His Excellency will tell Eddie that's what the fans want. Give it to him. And you and Oscar co-promote the show and play nice, as this is his backyard and the best bout on the card is his guy. So the sport wins. I mean, I'm just saying, I think that's how it would go, right?
Wrong.
What you're trying to do is relegate Crawford versus Madrimov to being an undercard fight, and I don't think those two fighters are going to go for that. Madrimov is a champion. Your guy isn't. Crawford is a pound-for-pound fighter.
Your guy isn't.
Terrence Crawford has been on pay-per-view several times.
Your guy hasn't.
And now what you want to do is relegate that fight, which is for a full title where your guy's fight isn't. You want to relegate that fight to being an undercard fight so that they can take a back seat to your fighter.
He's rocking a boat.
Remember, this is the same Rick Merrigan that told his fighter, Jose Ramirez, to walk away from $2 million for a Teofimo Lopez fight over there at Top Rank back when he was still over there at Top Rank.
The purses for yesterday's contest via the California State Athletic Commission seem to indicate that Jose Ramirez made a little over $1 million yesterday.
So you had Jose turn down more money for less money. In a nutshell, that's what you did.
Because he would have got $2 million with Teofimo, where he only made $1 with Rancis Bartholomy.
Granted that I think Jose would have lost that fight to Teofimo Lopez, where he always stood a better chance of beating a guy like Rancis, though all the same, you did turn down more money for less money, and now what you want to do is rock the boat when it comes to Ortiz versus Tszyu, which seems to be set, it seems to be made. Or is it?
Is he gonna fuck up that fight too?
Listen, I don't care about the overzealotry of fans. The reality of it is, for a young fighter like Virgil Ortiz, who has only fought for a grand total of 2 rounds, just 2 rounds against overmatched competition in the last year and a half, going in there with Tim Tszyu is a very risky endeavor.
It's a risky assignment. They know it.
So now what is Rick Merrigan gonna do? Is he going to hold this fight to ransom, hold it hostage, if Ortiz versus Tszyu isn't made the main event? If it's not made the main event, and he doesn't get more money, which is what he's looking for,
is he gonna pull Virgil out?
I'm not blaming Virgil for any of this, by the way. This is Rick Merrigan,
his manager,
who's amassed a reputation over the last year and a half, 2 years or so, for making fights magically disappear. Like what was supposed to be the Jose Ramirez versus Regis Prograrius fight, what was supposed to be the Jose Ramirez versus Teofimo Lopez fight. Is he about to make this fight disappear?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me.
Your fighter wasn't even the main event in this past weekend show. Virgil Ortiz's fight with Thomas Dulorme was not the main event, so that you can start beating your chest and beating the drum that he should be the main event in August in what is a non-title fight. It's not for a full title.
You weren't even the main event this weekend, but you want to be the main event in August. Or what?
What? You're gonna pull him out? You're already asking for more money. You want a pound-for-pound elite fighter and a reigning champion to be demoted.
He's rocking a boat.
And the thing is, as much as I like Ortiz versus Tszyu as a fight, I have my reservations, my cynicism, my skepticism, that it's a very, very dangerous fight. It's not the kind of fight you normally just get from the sport. It doesn't happen that way.
I think Tim Tszyu is committed to doing it, him and his people, but I'm not so sure about Ortiz's.
Ortiz hasn't even made junior middleweight, but he would have to fight Tim Tszyu. Ortiz, who has only fought for a grand total of 2 rounds in the last year and a half or so, what he'd be facing in Tim is a far cry from what he faced yesterday or earlier this year. Is he ready for a fight like that? At this weight,
is he ready?
Tim, comparatively, is a lot more acclimated to this weight. He's been on the deep end, he's been in wars, and he's fought solid fighters, faced different fighters with different base styles, for the most part has come out on top, and he would be the biggest puncher that Virgil has ever fought.
Is he ready for that?
Or is Rick gonna fuck all of this up, looking for more money? Is Rick about to price his fighter out? We then come to what was the main event of that same show. Former unified super lightweight champion Jose Ramirez versus former lightweight champion Rancis Bartholomy in what was...
It was a welterweight contest. It was fought above 140 pounds, just over.
Prevalent shenanigans with the scale at Golden Boy Promotions when you think about it, that Ryan came in at 143 instead of 140. Marlon Esparza came in at 114 instead of 112. Virgil Ortiz, he came in at, 155, 156 instead of 154. And Jose Ramirez, I think he came in at 142 instead of 140.
It's a common theme over there these days.
None of their fighters seem to want to make champion weight. That's the look of it. In any event, you saw Jose Ramirez, who's been removed from the sport for about a year. Rancis Bartholomy not too far behind him. Both of these guys had not seen action in months.
Jose hadn't fought since March of last year. Rancis hadn't fought since May.
Jose's 31. Rancis Bartholomy is 38.
Fun fight to watch. Very fun.
Both guys had their moments, though both guys look like 2 guys that are on the back 9. I know Jose's only 31 years old.
He's young.
Maybe it was the time away from the ring rust, but there was no steam on his punches. There was no power in those shots, and he landed quite a few shots on Rancis Bartholomy round by round.
Jose did show a good work rate. did show a good chin.
What is another glaring example of what happens when you put a pressure fighter in there with a pure boxer, as that's what Rancis Bartholomy is. The kind of fighter that's likelier to backpedal, back off, hang around the ropes.
Try to set a trap.
Which he did several times. The straight left hand from out of the southpaw stance, the counter left hand for Rancis Bartholomy, visibly stunned Jose Ramirez not once, not twice, more than thrice. Several times throughout the course of the fight, when Rancis Bartholomy would come up for air and let his hands go, the straight left hand was his money punch, and he visibly rattled Jose Ramirez several times with that left hand, stopping him in his tracks.
But not stopping him overall. What I noticed is, as many times as Rancis Bartholomy stunned him with the left, he couldn't finish.
He couldn't close the show in spite of hurting Jose several times. He'd stun him, but then Jose would get back on the saddle, back on the horse, and get back to overwhelming Rancis Bartholomy, who stayed on the perimeter of the ring, tucked behind his guard, only occasionally coming up for air to land one or two punches.
Then get back to surviving.
Because that's what he did most of the time and most of the fight. Tuck himself behind his guard and try to weather the combinations, the barrage of punches from Jose Ramirez, who really isn't big on power. Can't say that he ever was, but it was noticeable that there's just not as much steam on Jose's shots as there is on Rancis's shots. That when Rancis does let his hands go, he can hurt Jose.
He just can't finish.
And he can't keep up the pace. He can't throw as many punches within a round as Jose, and that's what won Jose the fight. Volume, that he was just throwing more.
Consistently.
And that's usually the story when you put a pressure fighter in there with a pure boxer. Pure boxers, even when they're having it all their way, they already don't throw that much.
Put them in there with a combination puncher, and they throw even less.
So activity is definitely what won Jose Ramirez this fight. Ahead of it, per boxing scene, Golden Boy's Eric Gomez said, "We are looking to sit down with Ryan Garcia in a couple of weeks, and Jose Ramirez's name is definitely going to come up. That is a possibility, and that is the kind of fight that he wants. They could do very good business with that fight. You can think what you want about Jose Ramirez's ability in the boxing ring.
What he can do, what he has left, and what his chances are against Ryan Garcia. Though if you made that fight between Jose's cult following on the West Coast and Ryan's buzz right now that he beat Devin Haney, they could do very good business with that show.
And they might, at the gate and at the box office, because they would build this as a pay-per-view, and you're thinking to yourself right now, is Garcia versus Ramirez pay-per-view worthy?
Between Jose's fans and Ryan's fans? Yeah, I think people would buy it.
More than people bought Gervonta Davis's pay-per-view against Rolly Romero, against Isaac Cruz, against Mario Barrios, against Hector Luis Garcia.
This fight is more sellable than any and every one of those fights.
Based on that, yeah, I think it could happen. And Jose looked beatable enough yesterday that Ryan might actually take him on.
It's just something to think about.